I'm faster, Jordan. I want to start. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. There are no basketball games today. We do have a basketball slate returning tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it as well because I don't know if you saw this, Eric, but really big prize pools posted for tomorrow as well. DK's got the $400,000 prize pool, $100K to first. So we'll be back to covering basketball tomorrow. We're going to have our normal post-lock show tomorrow. And then, of course, today we're going to be covering baseball. But after the show, Eric and I are going to stick around for a few minutes on playback, just talking about the NBA play-in games and seeing what value might find in betting the games, maybe some futures involved as well. So if you guys have any questions about that, stick around for the post-lock show on playback where we could explore some of those games. And as you're watching, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are sponsored here by Underdog. Eric, what's happening, man? How was the weekend?
Weekend was good. Minus Sunday sports, just lost. Was very happy I didn't end up posting anything in the premium Discord on Sunday because it would have all been L's, anything I was doing on my own. So that was an unfun part of it, but got to watch the Masters. My wife was really into golf this weekend, so now she's enthusiastic about potentially playing golf. Not sure how I feel about it because I also like it to be my thing, like my thing that I'm doing, but at the same time, I'm glad that she's excited about it and pretty positive Scotty Scheffler is a robot.
Yeah, he has been absurdly good over the course of the last year. He can even make 5-foot putts now, which is a nice little added bonus to his game. It's crazy when he was the best at basically everything but short putting for a little while, and now he's rolling those in. So he just crushed everybody in the Masters. And I haven't looked ahead to see what his odds are at the other majors this year, but I'm sure it's something just absurd.
I mean, it's one of those things too where I want you guys to sign up at Underdog. They're behind me. I'm glad that they're sponsor of our show. I play there a lot. It is an awesome place, not just for Pick'em, but also, you guys know, for the fantasy streets and the drafting streets. There is the huge tournament this weekend. They, for whatever reason, the week after the Masters, they go to the RBC Heritage, and it's an elevated event. So the purses are gigantic, and it's a golf course that's really fun. It's just weird to have it be the week after Augusta that they go and play this place, for the Heritage. But Scotty Scheffler is like a cheat code, potentially. Like, you're going to want him in every major. You're going to want him the rest of the way for those drafts. I think it was like 30% full last time that I looked at it, the big contest that they have for drafting the rest of the season throughout the PGA Tour playoffs. If he doesn't play this weekend, though, you're going to feel pretty behind the 8 ball, and he's still apparently entered in the tournament. So with his kid that's on the way and everything else, just some strategy that is involved there. But otherwise, you just want the 1-1, and then you want to move on with your life if you can, and Underdog for the time being, because Scotty Scheffler is absurd.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. I mean, now we're getting caught way off track at this point. But
it's okay. We got plenty
Eric
of time.
will be doing some golf content at some point this week as well. He's been doing some more of that and occasionally popping up on playback. Where if you guys want more takes on Scotty Scheffler, maybe he withdraws for the tournament by the time Wednesday rolls around. But that aside, we are opening up with a super chat here from Ace of Spade.
Oh my
start
gosh!
Talking about the classic slate, Ace of Spade wants to know. You're not going to believe this, Eric.
I bet it's
our favorite options for DK tiers. He would like to know. So let's go ahead and look at tiers for the baseball slate today.
Let's do it.
And let's see what we have. What kind of stacking options are available to us in tiers? I'm going to peruse this really quick and see what we have. All right. I got a sense here. So we're able to build stacks with the Atlanta Braves. We can make some stacks here with the Houston Astros as well. And my preferred stack overall on the slate for our classic purposes, Eric, tonight, it is going to be the Atlanta Braves. And considering that we can also make stacks of the Braves here in tiers, I'm going to be going with Ronald Acuna in tier 1.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's him. I will say I can make a pretty good case if you're trying to get different and like have a different type of stack there. The stuff Bobby Witt is doing, broke it down last night on MLB Lindy's. I mean, he's just been out of this damn world. He just gets better and better and better. And so he's going to be like a shortstop Ronald Acuna. I mean, he's going to steal a bajillion bags eventually here too, but hitting the ball so damn hard. If you want to get different or you're not going to stack up something specifically, Bobby Witt just fine to be going to in tier 1.
Tier 2. So keep in mind that I went with Acuna in tier 1. I'm going to go to Matt Olson in tier 2. We also have Austin Riley available in this tier. Kyle Tucker's here if you're going to make an Astro stack, but give me Matt Olson in tier 2.
Yeah, getting a little bit different. You could go Judge Soto as well. I don't hate the two guys that were going like 1-2 in a lot of fantasy drafts, or I guess 2-3 specifically. Soto going second behind Ronald Acuna for a lot of people in their drafts. But I am probably going to go with you where it's Acuna and then Matt Olson. That'd probably be the preferred way.
And now let's see what we have for tier 3. So tier 3, once again, we've got Braves, we've got Astros here. So if you guys do want to go ahead and make that Astros stack against Vines, you got Jose Altuve as an option. But considering I'm going with the Braves theme lineup and what I'm building out for you guys, Ozzy Albies in tier 3.
Yeah, Ozzy Albies.
All right, tier 4. So tier 4, this is one that does not have any Braves players available to us. So I'm going to go to another stack that I have some amount of interest in for DFS today in the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in tier 4.
Maikel Garcia for me.
Ooh, Maikel Garcia. So sticking with some of the Royals that you're liking. And now for me in tier 5, I'm going to go with George Springer. A little bit of correlation with Vladdy in the previous tier.
Yeah, flat out projection, George Springer for me. If I want, I mean, Sal Perez got scratched already. He's day to day. He strained his groin, going to be out for a little while. That sucks. But let's see. Yeah, I'll go with you with Springer again. Might be uncorrelated. Gleyber Torres there against Bassett as well. Yankees a stack I have a lot of interest in.
And then finally in tier 6, I'm going to go with Michael Harris to complete the Brave stack that I'm building out here.
Yeah, I'd be looking at Rizzo or Michael Harris. I will say also, Yandy Diaz, right on right. He's got the reverse splits over the course of his career at AAA and then the big league level thus far to this point, combining 2023 data and this year. So don't mind Yandy Diaz against Vines as well.
All right. So thank you very much for the super chat, Ace of Spade. If anybody's in our Discord and has questions for us, don't forget to at me over the course of the show. We could certainly address any questions that our customers have in Discord. One of the perks of being a Stochastic member. All the links to sign up for any of our packages below, whether you sign up for a data package, a Sims package, the lineup generator package. We'll make some lineup generator lineups in a little bit here as well. It does come with access to the Discord channel. So really quickly, let me check to see if we have any questions in Discord. If we do, I'll answer them. If not, then it's going to be time for us to start talking about Tyler Glass now as we get into pitching. But we do have a question here. It is from Hey, I'm Drew 95. He says, hey guys, I'm getting a good amount of Dodgers plus Glass now and Gray, but who are the best plays for cash games? Yeah, so for cash games, Tyler Glass now is the biggest no-brainer on the slate.
Click.
You're playing Tyler Glass now. The question becomes, though, who is the second pitcher do you want to be playing in cash? Because Sonny Gray, who's expected to be capped at about 75 pitches, I'm not all that interested in him for tournament purposes. Maybe you can make a case for him as a cash game option because there is some security, but that would still not be the direction that I would want to go. I'm going to say George Kirby as your SP2 for cash games, simply because that's where the ownership is. You got Glass now in about half of the field's lineups, Kirby in 25%. The options to me, it's really either George Kirby or Sonny Gray, and I'm going to lean towards George Kirby just because of the pitch count restriction on Gray.
No Frankie Montas for you?
Not in cash.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm probably with you. I'm not a George Kirby guy. I never have been. I can't remember a tournament slate ever where I was overweight to George Kirby. I just don't think he's very good. He's good at locating. He's good at just getting by. I know he's your Elon boy, so there's that. I've just never been a big George Kirby guy, so it's tough for me seeing him getting the second most ownership, but I think that's probably the right play against Cincinnati in a great ballpark. But for $100 more, I gotta say, I do for tournaments prefer Frankie Montas straight up over Kirby, so I'm going to be going that direction. You're getting massive strikeout upside, and that's a built-in floor to a certain extent there. I know the K rate hasn't been out of this world here for Frankie yet as he's building back up, but at this point in time, yeah, I'd probably be going George Kirby as well.
All right, so let's start our pitcher discussion now by talking about what we want to do with Tyler Glass now in tournaments. Because for cash games, you're playing. If you're playing cash games, it's such a no-brainer. For tournament purposes, you're still playing him. But the question is, how much of Tyler Glass now do we want to play when considering that while he is just way, way better of an option on paper than every single other pitcher on the slate, he's also $11K on DraftKings, so way more expensive than everybody else and way more popular as well. We haven't projected for 44% ownership in our latest run of ownership here. So when considering that the field is going to be playing Glass now at about half of their lineups, what are you going to be doing with Glass now in your lineups?
Yeah, it's a tough spot because 11K is pretty cost prohibitive. It kind of it blocks you out of certain stacks with ease. It blocks you out of a 5-man Dodger stack almost extensively with anything that's 1 through 6, 1 through 7. You're definitely making it difficult to get to any Braves in any capacity, and you can let the Sims tool run out its lineups and have the 4-mans that you can get to that have been showing up more in lineups for me this season. It's never something I've been comfortable doing, and now with the Sims tool basically identifying which are good 4-man, I do think it's a little bit easier for me to say, all right, I'm going to get over the field on a Tyler Glasnow play that I prefer, still get to some of those 4-man stacks here, and maybe there's going to be a path where I can kind of get away from duplication, get away from some of those overlapping lineups as a result, or just, be able to get to the lineups under the salary constraints as is. But there's no doubt that he's the best pitcher on this slate. It's not the best spot though. And that's kind of the one thing that I think is keeping me from like all in jam. Like if this were against Oakland, or if this were against Seattle, or if this was against my Twins, like guys that strike out a ton, that'd be one thing. But I want to at least throw it out there to play devil's advocate. The Washington's only had a 20.7% K rate and 343 plate attempts against righties. They do have the eternal strikeout Joey Gallo that exists in that lineup in some capacity, but at the top of this lineup, there's just not a ton of Ks to be available to you, but the talent, if you will, if he goes out and puts up 9-10 Ks, you're not surprised by it by any means, and you're not getting some kind of an ownership discount for it. So I'm going to be a little bit over the field, it would appear, after my first couple of runs, but still something that it's in flux. If something happens throughout the night, there's ways that I can get away from the ownership. But what are you planning to do? Because I think being overweight, considering the Sims tool confirmed likes Tyler Glasnow.
I'm about right in line with the field. He's in half my lineups right now, so no real crazy stand. And he's my favorite pitcher on the slate. It's just he's so popular. It's like you have a hard time getting way overweight to the field on him because you'd have to just so aggressively boost him and move stuff around to get to say like 80% of Tyler Glasnow or anything like that. I think the field more or less has it correct, especially when you consider that Tyler Glasnow, while the Washington Nationals are a team that have players that don't really strike out a ton for sure, but there is a certain security that comes with Tyler Glasnow. It's been so difficult to find that pitcher this year where pitching has been so erratic. I think the field has it right by having about half lineups.
I'm completely in line with that. I like that reasoning. For me, I'm at 58%, so I'm a little bit more than a little bit more, but having him in half your lineups today, I don't think is right or wrong. It's just one of those things for me. I wouldn't want to have less than half the field of him in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't want to have an all-in jam on an 11K pitcher in the year of our Lord 2024 with what we've seen from these starters. I think it's just a little bit too risky here, but the guy's got north of a 30% K rate, 223 xWOBA, 166 expected batting average, gets to face a number of righties that should still exist in this lineup. It is going to be pretty smooth sailing for him too, I think.
Got a question from Andrew Devison, who's saying that he's a lineup generator sub and wants to know, is it best to pull his lineups right before lock, or is it okay to play his lineups outside of scratches that are available in the morning? So baseball is definitely inherently different from basketball, where if you play an NBA lineup that you built in the morning and you played for basketball, you could say with other than the playoffs starting right now, in general, you could say with a fairly high degree of confidence, it's not going to be a good lineup. Baseball, it is a little bit different. You are best off building your lineups closer to lock for a couple of reasons. Number one, lineups could be different than they were projected to be early in the morning. There could be a guy or two who gets a day off. You could have starting pitching changes. And also, our projections could update throughout the day for numerous reasons, either changes in weather or just the total has moved a lot at sports books, which that also influences our projections. So to get the best results possible, Andrew, I do recommend that you build your lineups as close to lock as you possibly can, just so you have the most updated information. So that's what I think that you should
change in pitchers too. I mean, we'll see a lot of times as we go on this season. Hasn't happened a ton lately, but you're going to be waiting on who the hell is actually starting for a baseball team all the way up until about now. And then you'll find out that, so-and-so is starting for the Reds against the Mariners tonight. And you're just like, what in the absolute hell? And you look at his AAA numbers, he's got a 5.64 xFIP, and you're just like, all right, this is going to be enjoyable. So there are times that you just want to be waiting.
Let's see. I saw that Seiya Suzuki was put on the injured list just as we were starting this show. Was there a new Cubs lineup that came out, or did we just find out that Suzuki isn't playing?
Yeah, I don't think the Cubs lineup was out. We're waiting on Washington. We're waiting on St. Louis. We're waiting on Chicago. Those are the only three left.
And then Brendan Rodgers was scratched from the Rockies. They're not going to make a massive deal. Just keeping
Don't
you
care.
guys apprised of all of the news here, though. So let's get back and talk about pitchers. And Tyler Glasnow is really on a tier of his own. There's no pivot off of Tyler Glasnow because he's, let's see, he is $1,600 more expensive than the second most expensive pitcher over on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, he is $1,000 more expensive than the second most expensive pitcher. And on both sites, Merrill Kelly is your second most popular pitcher. So let's talk about the other pay up options on the slate, Eric, and we'll group these guys together. Anybody who's 8,500 or higher: Sonny Gray, Joe Musgrove, George Kirby, Frankie Montas, Merrill Kelly. Of the players in this price range, who do you like, if anybody?
I like Frankie Montas. I mean, I don't know how you can look at a Seattle matchup and not just be salivating almost every time. It's going to be feast or famine at times here. You've got, Polanco, you've got Rodriguez, you've got Haniger, you've got Rayleigh, you've got guys that I do like from a real baseball perspective, but the overarching thing is a 31.4% K rate in 421 plate appearances against righties is a gigantic number. They have just a 70 WRC plus, which does adjust for ballpark factors. And then we're going into last year's best pitching park. So we're going to T-Mobile. 31.4% K rate is really hard to be overlooking. And Frankie Montas, I don't know what to make of him here yet. I'm still kind of figuring it out, but so far so good. 265 x WOBA, 324 x slugging, a decent amount of righties that are going to exist in this lineup. So 19.1% K rate so far. That's not blowing me away by any means, but you go back to 2022, which I'm just writing off 23 because he had all of one appearance, but 23.4% K rate, 26.6% K rate. I don't know if 19.1 is going to be indicative of what we see going forward, but I got to think if he's going to face anybody and find success with it, it's going to be here. And it just seems like I'm just surprised to see the field less than 15% on Frankie Montas. And then a guy with Sonny Gray, who I love. I love Sonny Gray as a Minnesota guy. Then him going to St. Louis, it was heartbreaking to me. But 75 pitches, 80 pitches, like absolute tops. Impossible for me to want to roster him more than Frankie Montas, considering the strikeout matchup is actually better from what we've seen so far for Montas.
Yeah, I like Montas as a contrarian option in this price range. And it's not that he's insanely contrarian or anything. A little bit more popular than it was this morning. This morning, he was projected for 11% ownership when Lofty and I did the strategy show. Now he's at 15%. Still, though, this is a spot. The Seattle Mariners, every pitcher who's gone against him has been like uber chalky this year. Although Montas, that is not the case with him today. But if I'm looking for a lower owned guy, it is going to be Montas for me. And then I was not really getting to George Kirby this morning. I'm getting to more of him now. And like you, he's not somebody I typically play a ton of in DFS unless he's just crazy contrarian, is like a pivot or leverage or something like that. But what really did change the amount of exposure that I am getting to him now is that Sonny Gray was somebody who I was getting to a good amount this morning, but also didn't know what to make of that because we didn't have any kind of pitch count numbers. So this morning, Lofty and I were going back and forth, kind of throwing out some ideas and said like, all right, maybe he'll throw 70 pitches, maybe he'll throw 85, but ultimately decided like whatever I'm getting to now is going to change later based on what that pitch count is. And because that pitch count is now 75 pitches, that dramatically changed the amount of Sonny Gray that I'm getting to. And that got me to a lot more George Kirby. That was one of the things that ended up happening as Sonny Gray fell by the wayside. I do think the ownership is very high on Sonny Gray, 23% for a guy who's only going to be throwing 75 pitches. So of the guys in this price range, he's my favorite guy to get underweight to the field to. Not because I don't think he's a good pitcher and don't like the matchup, just how much confidence can I have in a guy who's going to be throwing like 3/4 of the pitches of other guys priced around him.
Yeah, and watch him go for 15 outs, but 8 strikeouts in the process. Wouldn't surprise me. Again, that's well within the range of outcomes against Oakland. Oakland, 28.1% K rate against righties, 85 WRC plus, 121 ISO. Not a lot of power, not a lot of opportunity, terrible ballpark. Opportunity for him to smash, but 75, 80 pitches. And this is like early season, like 2 weeks ago kind of stuff where you're so worried about the pitch count relative to everybody else. And he's the second most popular pitcher at pretty much any site, any place you're looking at right now. And the top pitchers tool just negative leverage that I don't want to inherit. And I would rather accept it with a little bit of George Kirby. So I'm on board with you there. I'm not getting to the field on George Kirby. I think you could probably tell that based off of what I said before, but I currently have 20% of him. Sonny Gray falling in less than 10% of lineups. So definitely a scary fade considering the matchup, but I think the right one considering the pitch count.
Anybody else in this price range that is of interest for you, either somebody you're over or underweight to?
Well, I want to see who gets thrown into the Cubs lineup here too. I was just going through my projected stuff. I mean, Merrill Kelly's one of my guys. Made me a lot of money last year betting Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly just nonstop. And these are the kind of matchups where it makes a lot of sense. We have seen this Cubs team be more strikeout averse than what they've been in the past so far, 22.2%. But you're taking who I believe their best hitter in their lineup out of it now. So there's that. Michael Busch going to definitely be in it. Probably Mike Tauchman going to be in the bottom of this lineup. They're going to have to probably use Alexander Canario is probably going to be who their other outfielder ends up being there. And that is a substantial downgrade in terms of a hitter. So yeah, it's still a scary top of this lineup. The Cubs, are better than they've been in recent years at the top of the billing with Happ, Swanson, Bellinger, Morel, even Busch so far to some extent. But back half is going to be a little bit more brutal. So I probably have a little bit more interest in Merrill Kelly, but not something that's going to dramatically shift my lineups. I currently was getting right around 18% of him. That's barely any positive leverage going his direction, but I believe he's got to have a little bit of an upgraded opportunity to be a top 2% when you take a guy like Suzuki out of the lineup.
Yeah, it definitely helps him a little bit. Not enough for me to prefer him over like Frankie Montas or George Kirby for me personally. Just eventually have to kind of make a cutoff of the players that I'm prioritizing. So Merrill Kelly, I could understand some of the reason to want to get there, but not quite one of the guys who I am personally landing on. So let's go ahead and start to talk about some of the cheaper pitchers then, and then we'll talk about FanDuel and all the pitching options on FanDuel after we work our way through some of these other options on DraftKings. But looking at the other pitchers that we have in the cheaper price range, let's go with all the pitchers who are $7K to $8,400. So Seth Lugo, Chris Bassett, Darius Vines, Martin Perez, Luis Gil, Joe Ross. This has kind of been a weird dead zone for me all season in terms of pitching. A lot of slates for me. It's been either punt options at pitcher, or it's been getting to the guys who are like 9K or like 85K and higher. And this is another one of those slates for me. I don't really love any of these options. Can you talk me into somebody? Do you feel different about any of these pitchers, Eric?
I do. There's one guy I feel quite different on. And it's not that I think I know something that you don't, or that there's something that's not being represented correctly, but it's simply, for me, you want to be early to the party. If you can be early to the party on certain guys who end up being it, awesome. There's no doubt that Luis Gil has shown upside, like crazy upside. The walk rate's been a problem. There's no doubt. We've seen 3-4 walks here in the first two, but let me just tell you, there is no way that if Luis Gil, with this strikeout rate, with this kind of stuff, 36.8% K rate, 176 x Wobacon, less than a 0.081. I don't even know how to say that. It's under 100 expected batting average going to his direction right now. He's been flat out unhittable. And if you run into a spot, this just feels so similar to our Mr. Ghost Fork himself from last year. Kadai Senga, rip, miss him. But just saying, this is like when Kadai Senga came out of the gate and was walking dudes nonstop, and it was like, just wait. Luis Gil's four-seamer changeup is just disgusting. They're disgusting pitches. And so if he continues to have this stuff, I don't know. I can't tell you. We don't have any sort of sample size. He was out of the MLB 2023 hurt. So this is the first opportunity that we've seen him with any kind of noticeable sample size. But so far, 600-ish pitches, 3.69 expected ERA in the course of his big league career. I think we could be walking into something pretty special if this maintains. I don't know if it does or not, but what I do know is that if the walks disappear off of this box score, you're going to see massive K tallies against everybody because of how unhittable that changeup is. And this four-seamer is generating whiffs right now. So I'm very high on taking shots on a guy like this when I'm getting him sub 10%.
Yeah, so Luis Gil, I do understand the upside there from a strikeout perspective. It's not where I'm going with my lineups tonight, though. The matchup is fairly difficult for him on the road against Toronto. Toronto's actually a contrarian stack. That's the side of it I'm on, a 6% owned Toronto Blue Jays. They're one of the teams I have more of than of most other teams. So I'm not on Luis Heel tonight. I do understand that there is upside there, but there's a lot of concerns as well that you also had highlighted. I mean, he
Yeah.
walks everybody. He also gives up a lot of power at times when he struggles. So I think it could go both ways. If he pitches well, it's probably going to be strikeouts. But if he gets hit hard, you get this situation where it seems like he's inevitably going to put people on base with free passes. So I could understand the upside, just not personally
Yeah.
where I'm going with
I
my lineups. And I don't have anybody in this price range in any kind of meaningful amount of lineups. I saw some people earlier this morning ask about Seth Lugo. Some people were also asking about Seth Lugo in chat. He's got a great matchup against the Chicago White Sox, but it is still a hitter-friendly park, and $8,400 is a good amount to pay for Seth Lugo. So another guy who I'm not really getting to.
Yeah, he's not going to be showing up for me. Even again, the White Sox, you know why the matchup, and it's elevating the pitcher himself. But for me, when I'm right about a guy, I want to get paid for it. And 7,400 is a price point that allows me a lot of stuff. And I think when I'm right, I'm really, really going to be right about a guy like Luis Heel. I don't know if this maintains, but I'm getting an ownership discount to kind of find out here off of, well, I guess it's identical ownership to what is showing up for Seth Lugo here at the moment. So I'm with you. Seth Lugo, not somebody I'm getting to a ton. I also don't really like Joe Musgrove today. Do you like what is going on with Joe Musgrove right now? Because I tried to figure it out a little bit yesterday. Velocity was fine, but like he is getting no swing and miss.
Wasn't this an issue for him at the start of last year as well?
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. All the years kind of blend together to some extent now. So I'm just going through what I was looking at again last night, and I just couldn't find anything. I mean, the fly ball rate is up 26.3% there. That's not exactly ideal, but I mean, he's been kind of more prone to fly balls in the past. The ground ball rate had come along for the ride last year, 46%. Now it's 36.8%. So that's problematic to a certain extent. But I was looking at the spin. His slider is basically the identical. It is the 100% identical spin number, 2793 RPMs. Like, I can't figure out why he doesn't want to throw his four seamer anymore. That was the pitch he threw the most. Now it's like the third most behind slider curveball. I was trying to find something in the data yesterday, and the whiff percentage is technically up, but like he's not getting Ks, and I don't get it.
Let's see. Let's look at his strikeout rate from the start of last year. Maybe just a slow starter.
Yeah. Some of the vets want to build up. He's 31, 32. He's been in the league for almost a decade. I get it, but 8.40 expected ERA sure ain't it.
All right. How about if we go to, career splits, right? Because that'll be more telling for us. So we look at his entire career. What is his strikeout rate by month? Yes, doesn't tell us anything. It's like in general, it looks like he's been a little bit better in the second half of seasons than first half. But I mean, it's like his first half strikeout rate is 23.3% for his career. Second half, 24.4%. And then across the board, his numbers are just slightly better in the second half of the year. So I think we could draw a conclusion he's probably a little bit better in the second half of the year than the first half of the year. If you look at for his career, 22.4% K rate in May, 21.9% in June, 24% in July, 23.5% in August, 26.6% in September. So it does like kind of increase a little bit, but I would say that a couple of things. A little bit of him being a slow starter, a little bit too of this just being a fluke, and he's made only 3 starts.
Then I think I got to click on it then a little bit. Joe Musgrove is 8.3% owned. He is 8,600. There aren't crazy upside arms outside of Glass now. Like, I made the case for Heel, but like there's a definite downside. You have Merrill Kelly, who is facing a top order of the Cubs that, again, they're not striking out as much here, but definitely a better spot here without Suzuki. And then Sonny Gray pitch count. Like, I feel like Joe Musgrove sub 10% on a 9-game slate is kind of a gift if everything is fine with him. If it's not fine, you're just going to continue to get the same results and you're going to feel like an idiot. But like, again, 8.3% owned is just, it feels a little bit too good to pass up here at this point in time, especially with Yelich out of the lineup.
Heath Dugan has some interesting feedback for us in chat. He says, all we do is yap. What are we supposed to do? Take our cocks out? How else are we going to communicate with each other? We're on a show. We're talking. I don't know how do we do it without talking?
Don't you want our feedback? What do you want us to talk about otherwise? Like, that's
No,
what we're
but that's the
supposed to
problem. I
do.
don't even know how we would do a show without talking. I don't know what else we do.
I don't know. The Cox thing sounds fun.
Yeah. I could bend over and maybe like open my asshole up a little. I don't know. But like, how would that tell you who to play? Yeah. Brand
The
says
rest of you is
sign
pretty
language.
pale. I can only imagine.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Jake DeWitt says, show us your belly buttons. Yeah. I mean, I'll put some thought into how we could do these shows without talking, but it's going to be difficult. We've got a couple questions coming in here. One is from Einstein. He wants to know, is Hauser a pitcher that we're getting to? So we can start talking about the cheaper pitching options for tonight, Eric. And if we're looking at guys who are below the price range we've already talked about, so now we're bringing into the discussion Nick Nastranini, Adrian Hauser. And by the way, Nastrini from the White Sox, he just got added to the player pool on DraftKings like an hour ago or something like that, or an hour and a half ago. So that is somebody who's new to the player pool. Not that I expect him to be like massively impactful through the slate, but just of note that he's been added. So Nick Nastrini, Adrian Hauser, Ben Brown, Ross Stripling, Spencer Arrighetti, Mitchell Parker. Of the punt options today, are there any of these guys that are standing out to you? And also Einstein in particular is mentioning Adrian Hauser, somebody who wants to know if we're getting to.
No, Adrian Hauser, I'm not getting to. He's actually the highest owned of all of these punts here at the moment, it would appear. Out of anybody sub 7K, he is pulling the most ownership. I guess Joe Ross could go into the bucket. I have a little bit of him, but San Diego, not the best strikeout matchup. They do go from a Sunday night baseball game in LA to flying to Milwaukee. Not exactly ideal, but again, not going to be factoring anything like that in. More of a talking point where Joe Ross, maybe he runs into a lamented San Diego lineup. There's ways 5.9% can work out there, but I don't find anything appealing besides potentially Ben Brown. Just from a strikeout perspective, I think Ben Brown probably brings the most to the table, where I think if he ends up getting things somewhat figured out in terms of hard contact, we could look into, look a year from now and say, oh yeah, Ben Brown was showing the signs. He's 24. He definitely has strikeout ability. He's shown already 25.6% K rate through, 3 starts, but those starts were Texas striking out more than you would think. Colorado striking out all the time. And then San Diego had 5 strikeouts there. So that being the best of the 3 outings, but such a small amount of sample size, 6'6" guy with velo. So why not take a couple of shots there? But more than likely gets completely clobbered. But Ben Brown's the only guy I have a share of out of anybody sub 7K, and I'm playing 170 lineups. So that's pretty wild. I'm very concentrated to the top.
Yeah, so I am kind of mixing and matching with some of these punt options. So I actually have some exposure to all of them, kind of spreading out a little bit. The one I like the most, though, is Ross Stripling going up against the St. Louis Cardinals. A couple things going in his favor, and none of them have to do with how good or bad Ross Stripling is, because he's terrible. The things that are going in Ross Stripling's favor: pitching at home in Oakland, pitcher-friendly ballpark. That's a thumbs up. And the other thing, too, is there's a lot of easy outs in that St. Louis Cardinals lineup. They've got a few formidable hitters: Nolan Gorman, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt. The end of that order is just total bullshit of easy outs. So Ross Stripling, if pitchers just kind of find out like, hey, I don't really have to pitch to Goldschmidt and Arenado and just kind of work around some of the danger, there's going to be a lot of just shitty pitchers that put up serviceable fantasy games against the Cardinals because of the easy outs towards the tail end of the lineup. So not saying I love Ross Stripling, but I do about 20% of him, and he's my most rostered punt option of any of these cheap guys.
Yeah, I forgot that he was down here. That's my fault. I have 8% of him, so he's the guy I have the most of, but not anything noticeable. I'm the same thing as you. I'm playing Ross Stripling for the ballpark. I'm playing Ross Stripling not because I think he's now magically good, although it's been a decent start to the season for him with a 25% hard hit. 372 expected slugging, better numbers you'd expect. He's given up a grand total of like 2 barrels, period. So that's useful in 60 batted ball events, but 3.89 expected ERA, a little bit of a fluke coming off of last year's 5.59 expected ERA. I think Ross Stripling more than likely not good, but ballpark and back half of that lineup no doubt makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, back half of the lineup, you got like Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker, top prospect, but he has just not been able to hit anything at the big league level. Yeah. Also, Victor Scott the second. So it's a really weak tail end of the Cardinals lineup. Easy outs to be had there. So I do like me some Ross Stripling today, at least relative to the other punt options that we have.
Yes.
Anything else you want to talk about for the cheap pitchers over on DraftKings? If not, we'll look at FanDuel, and I'll check see if any other questions come in.
How far do you think Mitchell Parker pitches into that game?
Well, I think the most likely outcome is he gets shelled by the Dodgers, which would
That's
really
exactly what
prohibit
I
how
think
deep
it
he
is
goes
too.
into the game.
Well, it's more that he's 4K and puts up 10 fantasy points. There's paths to like have Atlanta plus something. Oh no, it was something that I just was looking at. He's absolutely horrible. Him and Eric Eddy are awful, and we'll get to how awful they are here in a second. But want to at least point out that it's a 4K stretched out pitcher. And when there's a 4K stretched out pitcher, having a share 2 out of 150 is never the worst idea.
Hey, listen, you hear those words stretched out, and our guy from before is going to show back up. They're like, there's an idea for a sports program. None of that talking. None of that talking. Got
Jerkwad just said, I heard Eric's pussy was huge.
It's
the comment's hidden. I have to
it's
show
true.
it. That's actually funny. So I'm actually going to show the comment.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's massive. It echo. You never seen anything like it. It echoes. Great Ace LOL says, favorite contrarian pitcher and stack, and also why is Eric so submissive? All right, so for favorite contrarian pitcher, I mean, it depends how contrarian we want to talk, but in general, Frankie Montas.
Yeah, Frankie Montas would be the correct answer. If you want to say otherwise, Luis Heel is the guy I have the most to relative to his ownership.
And then the other part of the question here is favorite contrarian stack. We'll be getting to that in a second. We're going to hit on stacks in just a couple minutes here, and then I'll be able to answer to that. And then Kenny Wayne 256 wants to know, who is our favorite non-exotic pitcher tonight? Oh.
Favorite non-exotic? Luis Heel, probably.
Let's see. Frankie Montas for me. We really have to reverse roles for this. It's true. The exotic play of the night doesn't hold quite the same weight in baseball because the answer is kind of all the guys I'm rostering a lot of the days.
People do always say that I am the heel on these shows, so it makes sense that I'm rostering him.
Yeah, I'm going to answer Frankie Montas.
Okay.
There. And some of these other guys too, I don't know the backgrounds of these gentlemen, some of these punt guys. Like I'm going to assume Mitchell Parker, that's a very exotic sounding name, but I don't know for sure.
Good point. Yeah, there you go.
Sounds exotic, but who knows? Who knows? Let's go ahead and look at the FanDuel side of things. And I don't find pitching to be wildly different on FanDuel than DraftKings, other than for cash games. You can play Tyler Glass now. There's nothing that you really have to put too much consideration to for cash games. And you're going to play Tyler Glass now in cash. For tournaments where he's 29% owned, he is the priority FanDuel tournament option. But anything else that really stands out to you about the FanDuel side of things, where it's only a one pitcher site and some of the ownership is different?
No, not so much. I think this is one of those slates where when you have one pitcher who just so noticeably is above the rest of the field, that's when I really do like to focus on DK. FanDuel, it feels impossible. Like if you're playing cash on FanDuel, you're playing Tyler Glass now, right? And then you're just piecing together a bunch of the cheap bats that usually are available over on FanDuel, more so than relative to DK. But if you had to get away from Glass now here, I do think Montas, once again, the guy I just prioritize over anybody else on the slate. I know Kirby has a little bit. Oh, no, there you go. Frankie Montas, pretty much identical ownership to that of George Kirby, which I agree with there. 7.3% top 1%. I would take some shots on Musgrove. Again, 8,300, 3.7% ownership. He's had 4 starts to most people's 3 because he pitched in the Seoul series. Again, I'm looking at the data. I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on, why he can't avoid some of this hard contact, why he's not getting swing and misses when he's ahead in counts on 0-2. It's just very, very strange so far. But we'll continue to accumulate sample size. But there's no doubt that Joe Musgrove can be one of the better pitchers in baseball if things start aligning correctly.
Yeah, when I look at FanDuel, it's kind of weird because you got this ownership going to Tyler Glass now, 29%. Then Montas is 13% owned. Kirby is 12%. So the makeup of the FanDuel slate is so much different than the DraftKings slate in terms of just like the popularity of some of these pitchers, because you get Glass now popular. And it's so spread out behind him that it's not like there's any real ownership, in my opinion, to take any real significant stance on. It is a little notable to me that the field is totally off Sonny Gray on FanDuel than on him on DraftKings. I think the field is more correct on FanDuel than what they're doing on DraftKings. I'm going to go George Kirby here as my second favorite option on FanDuel. The strikeouts are a little bit less important. Then you also have him pitching at home, $8,600 against the Reds. So with 12% ownership, I do like George Kirby on the on the FanDuel side of things, even more so than I do on DK. So give me a George Kirby as my second favorite pitcher behind Tyler Glass. Now, there's no need to roster any of these punts at all for FanDuel purposes, though, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's go ahead and build some lineups in the lineup generator then. If you wouldn't mind here, Jordan, pull that up on screen. We'll build some lineups in the lineup generator. And if you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, link below to sign up. The lineup generator is going to build lineups for you, but they're also customizable. If you want to make some alterations to build it around players or pitchers you like, you could do that. And then it's also going to give you some questions like, do you want to build a balanced, contrarian, or chalky lineup? And any package you sign up for at Stochastic is also going to grant you access to our Discord channel. Link for that below in the description box here. But let's go ahead and start with DraftKings lineups. We'll build DK and FanDuel lineups, but starting with DraftKings, go all stack types, Jordan. And then let's go balance lineups for this slate. There's no like crazy chalk anywhere. I want to see what kind of balance shows up. Don't lock anybody in. I presume we're going to get to a lot of Tyler Glass now. Not exactly sure what some of our stack exposure are going to look like through the lineup generator. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. So for starters here, no surprise at all. Tyler Glass now showing up in 85% of lineups. Yeah, if you're just looking to build some of the most optimal lineups, Tyler Glass now is probably going to be your guy. If you're playing 20 lineups, you're playing 100 lineups, no matter what number is, I do advise that Tyler Glass now be your most rostered player here. Click on the stack exposures real quick, Jordan. Yeah, we're kind of spread out at stack exposures too. Dodgers, Blue Jays, Royals, Mets, Padres, White Sox, Cardinals, all showing up in a double-digit amount of lineups. For yourself, Eric, which team are you going to be stacking the most today?
So the team I'm stacking the most and the team I like the most are two different things. I like the Dodgers the absolute most. Kansas City is the team that I'm stacking up the most today. I'm in love with the Royals here. Nick Nastrini is not a major league pitcher. I mean, these guys, as you're working through some of these numbers from AAA into last year, I mean, the guy struggled at the AA level and then came up. They just need to take shots on guys early and often here this season to see if they have anything. But so far with the Charlotte Knights, we've got a guy who's 7 innings pitched, 2.14 whip, does have 13 strikeouts, which is nifty. But let me just say, I don't think that's going to jump out here at the big league level. Last season in AA, he carried a 1.37 whip across 2 different teams. Just strikeout potential maybe there, but my God, does he give up contact, it would appear. Very excited to accumulate a sample size on him, which may last us all of about 2 weeks before he gets just obliterated. But Nick Nastrini, a little bit early to the show, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to go out and tell you that I think Nick Nastrini is any kind of a world beater at pitcher or anything like that. It's just the issue I have with the Dodgers. The same issue I've had with them the entire year. They're crazy expensive. And if I'm going to be getting up to an expensive stack for myself today, I would rather get to the Braves for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're less popular than the Dodgers. We have them projected for less ownership. But at the same time, too, we have them with way better odds being the top scoring team on the slate. So we have the Braves with a 15% chance to be the highest scoring team on the slate. We've got the Dodgers at 11.5%, while the Dodgers are also more popular and more expensive. So the Braves are going to be my favorite team to get to on the slate. I'm playing them in single entry. I also think they serve as a really good pivot off of the Dodgers. So give me the Braves as a team to get to against Spencer Arrighetti. The Braves and the Astros, arguably, not saying I believe it, but at least in discussion of being the best team in the American and the National Leagues. And their pitching is just abysmal to start the year. And we're seeing that in this matchup too. It's Spencer Arrighetti on the mound for Houston. And then for Atlanta, it's Darius Vines. This is a very shitty pitching matchup. It could be a very high scoring game. I'm liking the Atlanta Braves quite a bit here, and it doesn't seem like they're going to carry some ownership, but nothing real crazy popular. Is that a team that you also like a little bit?
Yeah, I like Houston on the other side too. It would appear I'm getting to just about double digit of both of them here. Atlanta, I'm a little bit over. But yeah, the Dodgers, again, they are my favorite spot, but they have the highest implied team total. They are pulling the most ownership here. So I think Atlanta, Houston is definitely a nice way to go do it to help split some of that exposure. I mean, I am heading over to Pick'em sites, to Underdog, to other places, and talking back and forth with Jordan Klein before the show, producer Jordan Klein, best producer in the game named Jordan Klein, talking about how to go about building out some Pick'em cards with the Dodgers in the event they go completely ballistic, because I am underweight to them right now in DFS. They are the best stack to be getting to, but Atlanta, Houston, Kansas City, those are the 3 pulling a ton of ownership. And then The Yankees I like as a contrarian one here as well, but we'll get there for sure.
So let's look back at the lineup generator and see what are the other pitchers that we're getting to behind Tyler Glass now. And you're seeing George Kirby showing up a little bit, some of Sonny Gray. I'm not particularly high on him just because some of those pitch count concerns, but keep scrolling down. And what else? Yeah, we've got to some of Arrighetti. Not really thrilled with him, but I mean, it's just a couple of lineups he's showing up in there. But yeah, you'll see primarily our pitcher exposure. It's going to George Kirby, some Sonny Gray, and then Tyler Glass now carrying the bulk of the exposure there. But back to the top, Jordan, I just want to see what hitters it is that we're getting the most exposure to. And Will Smith, Mookie Betts, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Vinny Pasquantino, Chris Taylor, Starling Marte. So more spread out than some of these other slates. None of the Coors Field slate, we're just getting to uber amounts of them in the lineup generator. We're getting to a very spread amount of stacks, which I generally agree with. Anything else you're really noticing here before we go and build some FanDuel lineups, Eric?
Yeah, pay attention to the Dodgers lineup. Chris Taylor's been absolutely dreadful here. There are ways that they maybe get. I don't think they're really going to get away from Chris Taylor. He's been there a long enough time. So for me, he does give you the salary constraints that allow for you to then play the Dodgers as a 5-man. I am much more inclined. We talked about this a little before the show too, where I get to those 3-mans of the Dodgers quite a bit here. But as far as primary stacks, 5-man stacks, they're all going to have Chris Taylor as a punt along with it. And he has been so brutal so far to start this season that it's at least something to keep an eye on. If you're going to be running into duplication, run into duplication where the guy might not actually be broken.
All right, so let's go ahead now and build some FanDuel lineups. Did you already build them, Jordan? Oh, no, okay. I was looking to the left here and was like, oh, already lineups up. So let's build some FanDuel lineups. Same deal, all stack types. Let's go balanced again. For FanDuel purposes, we might like exclusively get to Tyler Glass now at pitcher, but yeah, if you're playing 20 FanDuel lineups and Glass now's in 18 out of 20 or 19 out of 20, I don't really have all that much of an issue with it. Let's see what he shows up here. Well, actually, less Glass now than I was expecting. We got 55% of Glass now. Scroll down real quick, Jordan. I want to see who the other pitchers we got to then are. George Kirby in 17%. Who else then? Hey, Montas in 10% of lineups. So those are actually probably, if I was building lineups with 3 different pitchers on FanDuel right now, those would be the guys: Glass now, Kirby, and Frankie Montas. So I'm definitely in line with that. And then if you look at the stacks, once again, pretty spread out here on FanDuel with no individual hitter in more than 33% of lineups. And then as far as our stack exposures as well, KC in 28% of lineups, the Braves, my squad there in 25%, 20% Diamondbacks, 20% Dodgers, 20% Padres, 20% Astros, 17% Pirates, 15% Mets. I think what the lineup generator is telling us here, Eric, this seems like a slate where we want to kind of spread some of our exposures around.
Yeah, I like spreading it out. I like taking that stand a little bit on KC. The top of this Kansas City lineup, just ridiculously good right now. Sal Perez being out, not ideal. Definitely diminishes it a little bit. But when you're playing just 4 batters over on FanDuel, pretty easy to look at the exposure there and make sense that you're getting to a lot of Bobby Witt and Maikel Garcia, and I'm pretty happy with that. Atlanta being second totally makes sense to me. Arizona, a little bit more there. Arizona's a team that made us a lot of money last year. They were a contrarian team that I know that you, myself, a lot of people were landing on early and often as that team looked a lot better. You're not really getting that discount this season. You're going to see the ownership come in on them, but a decent spot here going up against a struggling young pitcher. So a guy that talked about it earlier, I could see the strikeout upside there for sure, but Arizona confirmed power. So a decent enough spot over on FanDuel where keep the line moving. DK, we're definitely more, a little bit more homer oriented.
And then go back to the player exposures real quick, Jordan, so we could show the people what it is we're getting to here. And don't forget, once again, if you want to sign up for the lineup generator, link below in the description box. We've also got our player projections in here, our ownership projections, in addition to it building lineups for you. And you get Discord access as well. But some of our most rostered hitters: Vinny Pasquantino, Kyle Tucker, Jake McCarthy, O'Neal Cruz, Bobby Witt Jr., Austin Riley, Michael Harris. So kind of a spread amongst the hitters that we're getting to there. So let's start talking about some of our favorite stacks for the slate, Eric, which I know we've hit on a little bit here. I said I'm playing the Braves in single entry. If I can only build one, what the hell just showed up on your screen there, Jordan Klein?
I don't, hopefully it's not anything. Work smarter, work together, you fucking loser.
You know what? As technically Jordan's boss, I approve of him Googling how to work smarter.
Yeah, we need it.
Also, who created a website where it's like, here's how to work harder? You just kind of do it, don't you? Who needs to
I think
Google
you'd
how
be
do I work harder?
surprised. I
You
don't
just
know.
do more shit.
And that would make sense. That would make sense. But, that ironically is not always my experience in the workplace.
All right, there we go. Jordan, I appreciate your Google searches there and how you're attempting to improve yourself there. I like it. These are all good things. So stacks for today, Eric, I've already said my favorite stack overall in the slate and the team I'm getting the most exposure to it is the Atlanta Braves. I like that they have the highest top stack odds in our top stacks tool, and they're also not picking up any kind of crazy amount of ownership. I'm with you as well. I like KC. And one thing that does make KC look better today than they did earlier, if I'm not mistaken, at the time that Lofty and I did the strategy show this morning, they were projected for something like 12% ownership. Oh, good. Look, we're doing some research to find out who the real exotics are on the slate.
Oh
I
my
could see
God,
there,
you guys
Jordan.
are awful.
I have two teams that I have double-digit exposure to. One of them is the Braves, one of them the Kansas City Royals. So we're on the same page with
Okay.
that there, Eric. Are there any other teams that are real priorities for you that you are getting double-digit exposure to?
Not double digit. So let me pull this back up here. I think the Dodgers might have just gotten close in my last run here. I'm going through the Sims tool one more time, cleaning up for a couple of the things that we were talking about. Plus, I was getting so much Luis Guillorme that I wanted to just throw up and start over. But I'm pretty positive the two teams that I'm higher on than it would appear the field is Pittsburgh and the Yankees. I think the Yankees going up against Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett has been a better pitcher at home over the course of the last 2 years, but this is a Yankees team that can hit against absolutely anybody, and specifically at the top of this lineup, I don't think it gets enough love. How good of a season Anthony Volpe's having to kick it off, and we're like 2-3 weeks into this thing, but if he can continue this for Soto, Judge, Rizzo, Torres going the rest of the way, they're going to be in pretty good shape here. Trent Grisham, even in the 9-hole there. I think there's opportunities here for this Yankees team against Chris Bassett, who has never really been a pitcher that I've believed in. We've seen glimpses from him in the past, but overall, just this is a Yankees squad that at the top of it, there's just too much power to really overlook. And you do have against righties Chris Bassett, who 40 ISO so far, 208 expected ISO last season. I mean, we're talking crazy power to the right side. So looking at Judge, high home run call. Anyone? Yeah, he's pretty low owned today for what I think his upside is.
So the Yankees are my third most rostered stack.
Like
I said, two priority teams. Those are the Royals and the Braves, the two teams I have the most exposure to. So while the Yankees are a team that I don't have as much exposure to, those teams do have single-digit ownership. They're my third most rostered stack on the slate, Eric. So I'm not going to disagree with you at all. Chris Bassett is somebody else who I've not been all that high on the last couple of years. We start to see some diminished velocities. He's gotten older. He's what, like 36 now or something, Chris Bassett? So, you just get to a certain point where you're going to see a deterioration in skill set. He did pitch better in the second half of last year. He was abysmal at the start of the season, though. So New York Yankees, I do like their power upside. And this is going to be a team who there's a handful of elite offenses in baseball. The Braves, the Dodgers, and I'm going to put the Yankees in that tier as well as the Astros. Those four teams, anytime we could get those four teams at modest ownership, I'm interested. And both the Yankees and the Astros are teams to be overweight to, in my opinion. Astros project for 6% ownership as a team, as are the Yankees. Yankees are going up against Chris Bassett. And then we've got the Astros going up against Darius Vines. Are you surprised the Astros aren't picking up ownership in this matchup? You did say that they were a team you were interested in earlier.
Yeah, I'm pretty close. I mean, I've got 8% of them. It really comes down to like in the pecking order of today, as you're going through your lineups, I prefer Atlanta. I prefer Kansas City. I prefer the Dodgers. And this is just another expensive team to be looking at the guys that you want to be getting to. But with Alvarez, Tucker, two of the guys who have probably made the most money in MLB DFS in my life here, there's definite opportunity going up against Darius Vines, but a lot more 2-mans, 3-mans of them than anything that's going to be full stacked of this grouping. Because, Vines is 25, 4.01 expected ERA so far. He's been okay. There's a lot of other pitchers that I don't think are going to be okay going forward here on this slate. So not a bad matchup by any means, but in the grand pecking order of today, it's hard to say I want to get to Houston over these other spots.
Yeah, they are. Let's see, where are they at for me? Yeah, they're a team I'm going to be overweight to and like a little bit here. Do prefer the Atlanta Braves, but a good matchup here against Darius Vines. Astros are definitely a team who it's reasonable to pay up to be contrarian with. Are there any cheap offenses outside of KC that are catching your eye in any kind of way?
Yeah, Pittsburgh was one I brought up. I just think Adrian Hauser sucks. I don't think anybody is going to dispute that more than likely, unless you just aren't looking at the same stuff that I am, like stats and things. But there's no doubt that there's an opportunity anytime you get to face Adrian Hauser to just go absolutely ballistic on them. We get some lefties that are pretty nifty there, I would say, in O'Neill Cruz and such. Rowdy Tellez, somebody that I have quite a bit of here today as well. But a 159 expected ISO in 2023 to the left side of the plate. 140 expected ISO, even though we kept the ISO under 100 to the right side. So O'Neill Cruz, Brian Reynolds, professional major league hitter. I'll say that a million times this year. And then Rowdy Tellez. Those three. Jack Sawinski, we know that power upside, the power surge he had last season as well. 43 plate attempts, only a 111 expected ISO so far this season, 1 home run. But the launch is there. The exit velocity just needs to start barreling it up and squaring it up. But gotten better in terms of the K rate here. So you're not getting completely shorted at the plate with him at the moment. I think Jack Sawinski, a contrarian option to basically take along for the ride there. But O'Neill Cruz, Reynolds, Tellez, those are the 3 priorities for me to get a little bit different.
So I don't really have Pittsburgh 5-man stacks. I'm rostering a ton of these guys as one-offs and secondary stacks, though.
Do we have the same lineups today? What are we doing?
Some guys that you brought up there. Rowdy Tellez is actually my most rostered hitter on the entire slate.
Holy shit. I have 19% of him. He is my 1, 2, 3, 4th highest owned. Bobby Witt's one. I'm getting weird with Bobby Witt.
Rowdy Tellez, O'Neill Cruz, Jack Sawinski, and Ke'Bryan Hayes. Those 4 are the Pirates that I'm getting to the most. But yeah, I think this is a team to take shots on for a couple of reasons. Number one, super cheap, good matchup, and no ownership going here either. So this is my favorite way to save salary on the slate. Earlier in the day, I thought it was going to end up being the Chicago White Sox as a team just to save salary with. But as we got closer to lock here, it ended up being the Pittsburgh Pirates filling that role. And once again, not a team that I'm making very many 5-man stacks of, but I do like these guys as one-offs because I do think that there is some upside to put up some big fantasy points at cheap price points. Let's go back into Discord to see if there was any questions that we got. And King of Kings wants to know our home run picks. Dongs, Eric? Dongs? Who do you like to homer today?
Love dongs.
Fuck yeah. Dicks out for Harambe. Who you picking homer today?
Man, Harambe, haven't heard a Harambe reference in quite a second. Guess we're filling time with anything on these baseball shows. There you go. Should you want like the obvious? I said Aaron Judge. That doesn't feel like you're going to allow me to do that, Ron, right?
You could answer this however you want. If you pick Aaron Judge, I might call you a pussy, but you could pick him if you want to.
Oh, dude, I'm a huge pussy.
However you want to break this down.
Somebody already said that earlier, so that's funny. You know what? He has treated me so well. First MLB live before lock last Monday, he goes yard, bet him, goes yard. I think he's only gone yard twice this season too, but he's always at the top of my my home run model relative to odds at sports books, and it would appear he is again against Joe Ross. Jake Cronenworth of the San Diego Padres going yah in Milwaukee.
I stick with Rowdy Tellez, my most rostered hitter on the slate.
How
could he not be my answer?
I love it. I love Ruddy. He's 3.2K over on DK. He makes a lot of stuff work. Hey, Jose Miranda doesn't suck anymore. Home run. Woo. How does a bastard orphans?
Your Twins on the board there?
They are. Thank God.
There we go. Yeah, down 2-1. Down 2-1 to the Baltimore Orioles. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Rowdy Tellez as my dong pick. That's the dong of the night for me. If you guys are trying to figure out who it is that I'm banking on to hit a home run, that is going to be the guy. Then Einstein wants to know, what are our thoughts on the Cardinals and the Seattle Mariners as stacks? Cardinals, Mariners, either of those teams that you're landing on?
I mean, we could look in hindsight and be like, oh, of course, Ross Stripling gave up infinity runs to St. Louis, but not going to be doing it. Can't remember what slate it was. St. Louis actually had a sweat for me the other day. I can't even remember what it was, but yeah, I don't really feel great about St. Louis there. They do have north of a 4.2 implied run total, so there's at least that. And we've talked about a lot of teams like San Diego and Milwaukee, both of them pretty much the identical implied run total there. So like I'm doing a little bit of downgrade purely because of the ballpark. but it's hard not to. It's really, really hard not to.
So for me, when I look at these teams, they're not fades. They're not teams I have 0% exposure to them. They just kind of exist. I get to some of the St. Louis Cardinals. It's kind of funny because some of the reasons I think the Cardinals are viable as a stack, it's kind of some of the same reason I like Ross Stripling, which is if there is production from the Cardinals, we know which hitters it's going to come from. So it is kind of easy to stack them. We don't have to worry about the back end of the order guys all that much. So I have like a few Cardinals stacks, but nothing really all that significant. And same goes for the Seattle Mariners. That's another team. I have a couple stacks of nothing all that significant. These aren't teams that I'm really building my lineups around. The teams that are most important to me on the whole of the slate, it's the Royals, the Braves, the Yankees, the Astros being another one. Are there any really crazy contrarian spots you find yourself getting to? And one thing before you answer, in a couple of minutes, guys, we're about to hit to lock, and then Eric and I are going to head on over to playback. We'll talk a little about the NBA play-in games on the post-lock show. If you have questions for us about betting tonight or just anything in general about the NBA play-in games, we're going to be chatting about that in a little bit. So stick around for the playback show afterwards. But Eric, any crazy contrarian spots you're finding yourself on?
I have some Gallo Winker going up against Tyler Glass now. That's kind of been a pain point from him in the past. 168 expected ISO in 2023 against lefties. Righties, 183 expected ISO, but there's not really any righties I want to get to. Meneses, I saw, was not in that lineup when it came out for the Nationals. So kind of looking at those two guys because they can hit homers against anybody. They could also K 48,000 times. So there's that. Jesse Winker does have a 524 BABIP from last season. That's hilarious. Very small sample size, like maybe the luckiest dude ever against righties, but had a pretty terrible year as a whole. Was dinged up too. So there's that. Yeah, looking through it, friends, I mean, there's not a lot that we haven't covered, I don't think, that I'm like overly exposed to. I mean, there's 2% here, 3% there. That's kind of the way MLB DFS works. But I feel pretty darn confident that that we're going to be just fine rostering Tyler Glass now. But on the odd chance it's him or the bullpen there, do have those two lefties. So I have 4% Joey Gallo for whatever that's worth.
The problem here, if we're looking for super contrarian stacks, is the ownership is so spread out. There's only a couple of spots that aren't picking up ownership, and it's not spots I really want to be getting to. So like the Cincinnati Reds are low owned against George Kirby. The A's are low owned against Sonny Gray. The Mariners are low owned against Frankie Montas. And then you got the Nationals are low owned against Tyler Glass. Now, every other team is picking up ownership today, and I don't want to roster any of those four teams. So the answer is nothing for me, really. I know you'd mentioned you have a couple lineups with Joey Gallo. Sure, there's home run upside there if you're looking for a one-off. But as far as stacks are concerned, it's really hard for me to want to get to any of these really low-owned teams. And even somebody like George Kirby, like yourself, you said that you are not quite as high on him as the field is.
No.
But then the problem with even stacking against him is, number one, it's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. And then also, when George Kirby is pitching, you know, his normal way, just going about, even if it's not strikeouts, he's still a quality big league pitcher. He's not somebody who really gives up big runs all that often. There was that one start last year where he was like 50% on, where he just got shoved. I can't remember which matchup. Maybe it was the Royals. I just remember one start towards the tail end of the season where he was really popular and had the worst start of his career. But none of these low-owned stacks are all that appealing to me. And then every other team is 4+% owned, which isn't really all that contrarian.
Yep, perfectly said.
Any other final thoughts here on the slate before we head on over to playback?
It's just fun to talk MLB DFS again with the people. Hit the like button. That would be much appreciated. Do we have a deal going on for the people? Did we talk about a deal for the people?
So it's there aren't any free squares that I know of over at Underdog, but if you do sign up using the link that we have below or the promo code Stochastic, you get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, where over at Underdog, you could do stuff like play in their NBA playoff best ball drafts, which is a pretty good deal over there. Those are going to be, well, they've been already underway, except I assume more people are going to be drafting in the coming days because we got good shit going on over there. NBA playoffs about to start. Those are some of my favorite best ball formats, some of those playoff leagues. Are you going to be doing any drafts for that?
I'm going to be doing a lot of golf. So I do think, again, I've been thinking a lot about the strategy of the PGA season the rest of the way. I think this might have some overlay to it too, which has kind of got me a little bit of intrigued. If you guys like overlay, go over and get some of those PGA. It's a nice price point too for the big tournament, but it's here until the end of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And I think the game theory is figuring out who you want to get to that isn't necessarily just Scotty Scheffler, where you need the number 1 pick. I also got to say, for the majors, he's only ever won repeat golf tournaments. So he's never going to have seen Pinehurst number 2 or the Open Championship. I can't remember where the PGA is this season, but those 3 golf courses, he's going to be playing blind like everybody else, which I don't think gives him the same advantage. We've seen him win Waste Management multiple times, the Masters multiple times. I think this is a great opportunity where you don't necessarily need that 1-1 with Scotty Scheffler, but obviously you're taking him if you're there.
All right, guys. So jump on in over to Playback. Jordan Klein just dropped a bunch of links in there. So YouTube show ending. Eric and I are going to head on over to Playback. So if you guys have any questions for us about the NBA Plus, or if you just have other questions about the baseball slate that you didn't answer on the show, go join us over at Playback. We'll start talking about some of that. So see you guys over there. Peace out.